The holy month of Ramadan is currently underway until the 22nd of this month. This is the month on the Islamic calendar where Muslims are fasted from a number of activities such as food, drink and some forms of entertainment from dawn to dusk. I'm now joined by Professor Adam Mahomed, a special gastroenterologist, to help us understand what fasting does to a body. Professor, very good afternoon. Thanks so much for speaking to us. Happy Ramadan, I suppose, is the first place to start. Let's talk about fasting and what it does for the body or to the body, particularly during this time of Ramadan.
And thank you so much, Hugo, for having me on your show. But just to greet all your listeners and viewers from the Muslims, a festive Ramadan, and also to our Jewish colleagues in South Africa and our fellow Christian South Africans. For this is also a very religious and spiritual time of the Easter weekend, and wish them all a good and festive and spiritual weekend. Thank you so much. So the essence of Ramadan is a continuous daily fasting from sunrise to sunset for approximately 30 days. So generally the principle is you would get up before sunrise, so you're looking around 4:30 to 5, you have a meal, and then your next meal or even any drink would be at sunset. So in South Africa, we're lucky, it's approximately 13 hours, but it can vary from different countries depending where they are, and it can be anything from 12 hours to up to 22 hours, depending which area it is. And from a purely health point of view and from a science point of view, the best analogy to link to what we're doing is something called intermittent fasting, where people do not actually eat for periods of 18 to 20 hours and sometimes even 24 hours. However, with the period of intermittent fasting, you are allowed to have liquids such as water and black tea or black coffee, but no nutritive additives are added into that diet. So the benefits are numerous. The first one that I can tell you is it's been proven in numerous studies. You get better sugar control and you get better insulin resistance, and it decreases insulin resistance. For the lay person, your body produces insulin to deal and help with the absorption of your glucose when you eat. And if you fast, what it does, it encourages your body to lower this resistance. So when you're eating, it utilizes this level of insulin and makes you much better and avoids the challenges of obesity. So that's the first biggest effect. And we know insulin resistance is linked to a lot of adverse events and issues to the heart, the liver, as well as with cancer. So I'll just stop there for you to see if you need to, for me to clarify that further. But the biggest effect is on insulin resistance and sugar control.
Now, Professor.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to come in there and ask about the younger members of the Muslim community. I'd imagine that for a 10-year-old, fasting may not be a possibility. So when we talk about fasting and the various things that people fast during Ramadan, is it age specific?
So generally, from a religious point of view, if you're healthy, not old, not ill, not young, you should fast. The religion excludes people who cannot fast. And there are alternative ways of penance for not being able to fast. So it is discouraged in those that can't. And, sometimes people's religious convictions are so much stronger than their physical well-being, and that does cause harm. And generally, we do not encourage young children to fast, or even the elderly, or even people who have illnesses that cannot manage the trauma and challenges of the body to fast. And most religions have a compassionate argument for any religious activity, and Islam is no different from that there. So we discourage young children, elderly, and those that are ill to actually complete the fast and to do other ways to get the reward of fasting.
So let's talk about some of the foods that people give up and during this fasting period. You mentioned to us that Muslims will wake up just before at dawn, if you will. They will have a meal, and then obviously have their next meal 13 hours later. Are there specific food stuffs that they try to avoid, or that they do eat for that matter, during this period?
So generally, one of the things from a religious point of view, which is a practice of our Prophet, peace be upon him, is to have dates or khajur. And dates are considered to have a good sugar index as well as a lot of fiber. And being not spicy, it helps to cool the challenges of the month as well. So that's one of the things that are really encouraged to be taken. But generally, the food products that we would encourage people is to avoid drugs, drinks such as cool drinks, fizzy drinks, even coffee and tea, which generally are diuretics and can encourage you to actually lose more water than you need. And to eat in moderation. Lots of times people overeat and you end up actually feeling more ill than what you should be. And to have your normal food products. And protein, which tends to give you a much sustained energy level, is encouraged, as well as some fats. But it's actually keeping to a regular diet that you normally have, and to avoid too much carbohydrates that are high in glucose that releases immediately. So we encourage a low GI carbohydrate food products. Soups that are more bulky and chunky tend to last longer in the stomach. But it is meant to be a challenging fast for you to appreciate the challenges of those that are less fortunate in the rest of the year, about how they don't have access to food. So it's not that you can eat as much as you like. You will feel the pangs of hunger towards the end of the day. And it's for you to remember and challenge your spirituality and your body, and it can get done.
Now, final question, Professor Mahomed, is I did go through a fasting period, and one of the things that I gave up, in fact, was carbohydrates. In fact, bread, to be specific, because I absolutely love bread. So it was one of the things that I gave up during Lent, which is what we celebrate. Now, my question to you is, I've felt a huge amount of energy in the gym. Would there be a link, if it were, the absence of a huge amount of carbohydrates first thing in the morning to sustained energy throughout the day, or when people work out?
So I think if you look at the signs of intermittent fasting, which is similar to what we're talking about, your body adapts. Your body will tend to use ketones as a fuel source. And there are lots of endurance athletes that actually train being hungry and starved and not using carbohydrates, and they would fuel with fat or lower amounts of carbohydrates and more proteins. And they actually get a much better workout because you're not getting the spikes of glucose. So I think the challenge is, it takes a while to adapt. It takes at least 3 to 5 days for your body to get used to the ketones. And that first period is very hard. But beyond that first week, your productivity, your mental alertness actually increases. And that's not just because of the ketones, because your body undergoes a dramatic change in utilizing of food sources. Inflammation actually decreases. You get an increase in growth hormone, which we know makes people much better. You get better muscle bulk. You get a better metabolic rate. So beyond the fasting period, it actually helps you to you actually would be able to exercise better, train better. However, high intensity exercises tend not to do well with this sort of fasting and that sort of exercise. Whereas low level intensity exercises, you could actually go on without actually bonking, if I could use that word, for many, many sessions.
Professor Adam Mahomed, appreciate your time. Specialist gastroenterologist, speaking to us about the effects of fasting, particularly during this period of Ramadan.